Welcome to another episode of Reminiscing, where we explore AI, past, present, and the possible. I'm here today with a very good friend of mine and an amazing individual, Dr. David Zaretsky. He's been gracious enough to join the podcast today. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He serves as a fractional executive, fractional CAIO, Chief AI Officer, as well as a Chief Technology Officer. He's an AI entrepreneur, speaker, professor, and futurist. His innovative and visionary entrepreneurial executive mind has led him to do a lot of advisory. He's an accomplished engineer, data scientist, researcher, lecturer, as you can imagine, and published author. He has a passion for growing businesses with strong leadership experience with both professional and academic technology expertise in software and computer engineering, with over 20 years of experience in leadership, strategy, marketing, sales, operations, product development, and consulting, pretty much the end-to-end of running a business. So welcome, David. Appreciate you being here.
Always great to connect with you and spend time talking about things. You know, it's one of my favorite things to do is engaging with brilliant minds. So
I appreciate that, because one of the things I want to bring up is that I was gracious enough to be invited by David to speak at Northwestern in a few of his courses. The one recently was with the Northwestern Masters of Science in Law at the Pritzker School of Law, and we talked about AI ethics, the state of AI ethics. We did some case studies, very very engaging students always, and David leads the discussion, and I really appreciate you bringing me in for those opportunities.
That was probably one of my favorite classes that I've taught, and specifically having you come in there and really grounding the conversation. You can tell by the conversations and the questions. There's no time for lectures in that class. It's just
I know you have a time slot for lecture.
Yeah, it gets smaller and smaller depending on how good the guest speaker is.
So that's always cool, because really amazes me is the students and what they latch on to and want to take a deep dive on. Yeah. So it's really good. Really good. Let's talk about how AI is influencing education, I guess especially from a university and college level, and how you guys are tackling that, and especially at Northwestern. Especially, what are your views on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have probably the outliers view on these things, because I'm as you said, I'm a futurist, so I'm very optimistic about the future, but I'm also looking back and seeing the trajectory. I'm very pessimistic about how students are handling AI and how they're engaging with it is very disruptive, I think, to their well-being. I think the universities, in the most part, are not being very realistic about the expectation of what the real world is asking for. And so they're sort of like set in the past, and students are already well beyond, catching up to what industry is asking. And I think there's a disconnect.
Right.
And
because they, being a student and want to experiment and curious about the technology, they're probably playing with a bunch of different tools, learning what they can do, learning what's best, passing those experiences to other students, showing them what they can do and what they shouldn't do.
Yeah.
I think universities really have to have a policy around AI, specifically generative AI, and how what the university stance is, and how they expect students to leverage it, and also to be able to identify if you've done a paper or something in AI to indicate that as a source, or some kind of policy in order to put some guardrails around that.
Yeah. The the class that you last came to, it's called the Evolution of AI. A lot of that class focuses around critical thinking, and that is probably the most important thing you can teach students today, because without critical thinking, you really have nothing to offer anybody, right? If in a world where AI can do all the coding and run businesses, and we could talk about that too, but somebody has to orchestrate, somebody has to direct, somebody has to be in charge, and that requires critical thinking skills. And so a lot of that class was really around, let's look at what's going on in the world, where things are heading. How do we tackle these problems? Do we just let AI run rampant and do whatever it wants to do, or do you set guardrails, boundaries, and so on? Now, what I have found just in the last, the last 2 years, but really the last year predominantly, I've seen a massive decline in critical thinking skills. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that more and more students, not everybody, but more and more students rely on the ChatGPTs to be the first source of information. Instead of starting with their own ideas, they go straight to ChatGPT and say, what is the answer? And then they decide whether or not what to do with it. I really think it should be opposite. ChatGPT and LLMs should be a research tool. It should be a tool to help you optimize, to use it in your day-to-day, whether, I don't care if it's coding or even if it's to help you research a paper or come up with an outline. I try to be realistic about those things in my courses, but what it does create an opportunity for is the ability to elevate the workload and the direction and the critical thinking skills, and that really takes a lot of work to overhaul courses and things to reshape and catch up. I don't know that enough professors are doing that, and that worries me.
I think that is the most prevalent problem with AI in education. If we are limiting or kind of circumventing the critical thinking of students, and they're not really exercising that critical thinking muscle, and then becoming over-reliant on those tools, then that does the student a disservice. So when they do go into industry, working with a company, even developing their own business, if they lack critical thinking, none of this is going to work out well. What I think, to your point, is the professors have to be intentional about having critical thinking exercises built into the courses.
Right. And unfortunately, that requires a lot of overhaul of, courses that you maybe have taught for 10, 20 years, with certain updates and stuff. Some of them have exams, some of them have projects, but I think, taking theory and applying it, and even giving them more challenging problems, so things that you could have easily coded up as a solution. Now coding is just one part of the output. Really, now it has to be a broader type of project where you have to do all the research. You have to understand the broader impact and the problem and what you're trying to solve and why you're trying to solve it. And you have to, I think, elevate the, now you have all these tools that can help you to solve the output. So coding could be just one part of the output, but I think it's that whole journey that's really important to understand. And it reminds me a lot about sort of the entrepreneur's journey. A lot of people say, when you create a startup and then it fails, it's like, oh, it's not really a failure. It's that lesson that you learned creating a startup and failing that it helps educate you and become a better entrepreneur on the second time, third time, and so on. But had you not gone through that journey, you would never develop those critical thinking skills, right? And so if you used an AI to just build your company and put on autopilot, you're not really solving, that problem, that developing those muscles, that you were talking about. So I think it's a careful balance. It's a juggling act, and I don't know. I think there's going to be some, people will go through some hard times first before they find that proper balance, and how we juggle that, how we do that at a university level or even at grammar school, middle school. These tools are not disappearing.
Right, they're just getting better, and I can't, I just can't see the lower grades using these tools. I mean, I'm pretty sure they do, or maybe at home or whatever, but I can't see that as a part of the classroom experience. Not in the elementary and middle school level. They got to develop that. They have to understand what this is they're learning, what's the steps of figuring this stuff out before they use a tool. And then on the other side, the vendors of these tools have to also educate on how to best use them. The worst thing you can do, in my mind, is use ChatGPT for search. That's not what these tools really. The strength of these tools is not that. And understand how LLMs work at all. Because it's not, learning anything. It's the only thing it's learning is what's that next word or next phrase that you're typing in to when you generate text, or you have to build up skills. In our case, the English language, and have a chain of thought prompt to understand, okay, what you want to create, and making sure that you create what is intended, that the tool creates what is intended. So that takes a level of understanding the language, the constructs, just like programming.
Yeah.
And so you can guide the output. Even though these tools get better and better, my belief is that we are going to need very skilled people at critical thinking, subject matter experts, to be able to discern if the tools are actually delivering what's intended.
Right.
If you don't have that, how can you know what the tool is doing is correct?
Right. Now, taking a step back, going back to, the middle school and stuff, there, we here in Chicago, we have a huge problem with education. A lot of most kids in the public school system are reading and doing math like below grade level. How do you catch those students up? And especially if the parents are not engaged or they don't have the skill sets. So I think there is a place for AI in that. Interestingly, I was just, a friend had forwarded me this article. A couple of professors at Kellogg at Northwestern trained a model for students, but it wouldn't give you the answer. What it would do is help you think through the questions and guide you towards an answer. I haven't had a chance yet to play around with this, but I think that's the right direction, is providing a tutor.
Right.
They wouldn't just give you the answer, but they would help you work through the problem and such. So I think that something like that could be very helpful for kids who, maybe the parents are not strong in math and they need a tutor, and you could work with that towards getting to it. But I think that, things like that have to be more prevalent in universities. Like, hey, these are models that you could use,
right,
because they're designed not to provide you the answer, and that becomes sort of like the certified type of tools that grade schools and stuff, and help get kids caught up. And because if you're not set up for education, at that level, I mean, you're unfortunately right now you're written off.
True.
And so we want to try to reduce that gap as much as possible. And so I think that there could be opportunities there. at the same time, obviously, like the youngest, at those young ages, that's when the critical thinking skills are most important to help develop. Because if you lose that, you're also
right.
there are ways of developing those critical thinking skills. Sports, team building exercises, different clubs and stuff where students, can work on those things. But some of the schools now they've been cutting budgets,
Yeah,
and now
true.
there's no after school sports, and there's and
Yeah,
so I in many cases we're doing a disservice even to the young kids these days. So it's a lot. I think the onus is on the parents to make decisions on behalf of their children and be very vigilant about what they're getting into, and but also try to set them up for success if they're not getting enough from the schools.
right. Proactive parenting and as a partner in your child's education is extremely important. And finding that balance on where AI can be used. Like I mean, I agree with you 100% that AI can be used as a tutor, as something that can aid the instructor, in this case, to help the students that are sort of behind or below level to rise that level,
Yeah.
raise that level to where they need to be. And I think there be, like you said, there need to be more. I'm not aware of what is out here as far as the educational piece for AI, but I know there's some AI tutors and things like that can probably be adopted. So from there, I just want to add that one of the things I'm doing, and I'm part of the founding editorial board of AI and Ethics Journal by Springer. Recently became the associate editor for AI and Education. That's part of the Springer AI and Ethics, and we receive a lot of different research in AI and education, and it ranges from K to 12, which is a lot of focus is on, and also how universities can best leverage AI in different curriculum. So if you want to submit a research to that would be fantastic. Encourage your colleagues to do so, just to continue to raise the level of attention in that area.
Yeah, one of the things I'm working on with some students, I have probably about a dozen or so different research projects going on at the same time, but one of them is on developing new skill sets. Because what inevitably is going to happen is a lot of people are going to get, either laid off or jobs are going to change because they're going to become almost not necessarily relevant, but duties that require a lot of sort of repetitive workloads and things like that. Those things will probably be optimized with AI. So some of those jobs will be displaced. Well, what do those people do? So they need new skill sets. Well, are you going to go back to college at 40, 50 years old to get a new skill set? No. So I think learning new skills outside of the university system is going to be a huge need. Now there's companies like Coursera and Udemy and stuff like that, which are already doing that. People can create, but those are predefined topics. But let's say there's a new topic. I want to become I want to become a plumber. I want to become a auto mechanic. I don't know if you can find that in Udemy.
Right. I know a lot of that is actually on YouTube. YouTube is a great source for learning.
Yeah.
And a lot of professors put their courses on YouTube.
Yeah. And you have to search it, right?
Yeah.
But can I create a syllabus of, I want to become a quantum engineer. What does that require? Okay, so overnight, quantum engineering becomes like the new thing. And, okay, I need to figure out all of the main things that I need to learn. And it could be, maybe I'm a business person who needs to lead a quantum engineering company, or maybe I'm, somebody in grade school who's really interested in quantum engineering. And so you have to have content at different levels. YouTube doesn't do that. Udemy doesn't do that. can I then take all that content, distill it down to something for an eighth grader, something for a high level business person, and I think that could be a great way to develop new skill sets for people who want to shift jobs and professional in different areas.
Right. Talking about shifting of jobs and displacement, AI and like any technology is going to create new jobs.
Right.
But like you said, everybody's not going to be transitioning to those new jobs.
Yeah.
But so what do they do? Like you pointed out, there are all the trades that are being overlooked, like plumbing, HVAC, electrician, all those things. They are still going to be needed.
Right.
And so there needs to be sort of a pivot to some of that. So, and a fast track to say, okay, if I'm being displaced by AI and being an electrician is something may want to pursue, or HVAC or whatever, give people a path to that and understand what can be done to learn that, and make that available, online for free, whatever. Like the universities, you have Harvard and who else? Is it MIT and Stanford
Yeah.
that just released all their courses on AI for no charge. I know Google has it,
Right.
Microsoft. One of the reasons they're doing that, to hit your point earlier, is that they see this gap. Not only for people need to be reskilled, but it's a gap period for AI folks. People that versed in that understand AI,
Right.
and it's not enough people to even take these jobs without the proper training.
Right.
So it's that too. And then students, I've talked to a lot of students in computer science that are, wonder, I'm not going to have a job.
Yeah.
Right?
High schoolers are now learning this stuff. So you're getting out of high school and you already have the knowledge base. You have companies like Palantir, right, who's just hiring kids out of high school and bringing in professors to teach them. They're learning on the job. They're finding the best and the brightest right out of high school. There is, I tell my students, because I teach this AI innovation lab
Right.
course that you've spoken at quite a number of times already, and that class has gotten, even better. Every year it gets better and better because all these new tools and capabilities that come out. And I tell my students there is absolutely no better time to start your own company.
Right.
Because you have all the tools, all the automation, all the capabilities. You don't need a massive team. You could hire 2, 3, 5 people and run a solid company. And you don't need any more to hire 100 people. You don't need these big companies. So when you're talking about like the new opportunities, I think what is going to happen is you're going to have more and more small businesses popping up.
Right.
And you can train people to become entrepreneurs, to run a business, to run a Shopify, to run a, if you got a great idea, there's no better time in the history of the world to start your company. And
That's true.
Or a few.
Exactly, because you can, with some foresight, you can create those employees, those agents.
Yeah.
What I've talked about in the previous episode is AI strategy, even from a personal level. Figuring out what's your strategy for this, because even with folks in the industry, we're finding stuff changes so often. We're like, oh my God, how do we keep up?
Right.
And I always tell people to pick a lane and get very good at it.
Yeah.
And then source those courses or those opportunities to learn more. But that's all a part of your personal AI strategy to be able to do this. And then if you want to start a business and leverage AI, that's going to be huge. Understand what's your AI strategy for your business, and so you can be that orchestrator of all these agents that's running parts of your business with your key people, those 5 or 6 whatever key people, and understand what that is. So, I think that's going to be popping up all over the place.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying this conversation, please stay tuned for part 2. Don't forget to share this with other inquisitive minds in AI, and we will be exploring more in AI in future episodes. Remember to like, share, comment. See you next time.